Hello, I'm Dr. John Whalen, psychologist and author of Going Crazy in the Green Machine. In this series I talk about a number of issues that often come up with military veterans. So in this series I talk about the roles of military identity and mental health issues, and then move on to talk about issues such as guilt and shame, survivor's guilt, abandonment, betrayal, sanctuary trauma, and also the role of anger among veterans. Today I'll talk about military identity and mental health issues. So what does that mean, military identity? I mean, I'm only one person. If you think back to the anxieties, the fears of failing, the fears of not fitting in when you went to basic training, and all the effort that you were willing to put in to make sure you succeeded, which meant taking on maybe an entirely different set of values, from honesty, commitment, loyalty, endurance, pushing the limits, relying on other people. What happens out of that experience, I mean, you learn a lot of things about military culture, but what happens out of that experience for most people is a transformation in terms of who you are as a person, how proud even recruits feel having succeeded. Different person from who they were 11 or 13 or 14 weeks previously. That's how much of a difference it can be for people. Now you take that and you go on to battle school, you go on to trades training, you go on deployments, you go on more training. People learn to rely on you, you learn to rely on other people, you learn to stay focused, you learn to follow discipline, you learn to make sure that you are always up for the challenge. And what that usually means is that people learn to focus on their external environment. I have people, I need to make sure that I don't make a mistake. I don't let other people down. That I have the respect of other people. And what often happens in that new role, that go, go, go role, is that what happens internally, the reactions that we may have, our disappointments, things we're sad about, things we're upset about, what we tend to do is push those away. Or we'll complain about things, but we won't really go to a deeper level because we don't want other people to see us any differently. As not one of the team, as not one of the section. Now I'll make one statement here. When I talk about soldiers, which I'll talk about quite a bit, I'm also referring to sailors, Air Force men, and women, because they also take on these values. So getting back to the topic of mental health, well, mental health means what? I can do my job, I can stay focused, I can get through my days without getting too upset, but it really doesn't really affect me. So what happens when deeper reactions start to happen? I'm not doing well. I feel down most days. I really don't care about my job. My sleep's off. I'm irritated most of the time. So what do people tend to do with those reactions? Now keep in mind, I want people to see me as strong and reliable and dependent, but I've got this other stuff going on. So people tend to do, well, not only for military people, civilians do it as well. We tend to buckle down a bit harder. We work a bit harder. We try to distract ourselves. We try to ignore what's going on internally. We may start to, party a little more. We may get involved in a new activity just to buck up. But the reactions don't go away. So we may start to withdraw a bit. We may be more irritable, may notice some things. We'll pass them off. That's nothing. It'll go by. So what tends to happen is we push these things away. We don't want anybody to see them. We don't want to see them for ourselves. So the idea then of doing what's required as part of, let's say, formal mental health, to talk about them. Well, how do I talk about them? I don't know that skill. I don't know how to lower my guard, and maybe look like I'm weak, maybe look like I'm not up for it. I don't really want to do that. So there is a real challenge between what I talk about it in the book, about military identity. There's a huge investment in that version of ourselves. But our private, the human part, there are not many outlets for that. Now, some people may have a buddy or civilian friends that they've stayed in touch with, that they can have these conversations, but for the most part, when you're deployed for long periods of time, you're not going to go to that place. So they tend to, well, fester is a strong word, but they tend to erode confidence. They tend to move you back from the group, move you back from the team. So finding a way, or finding ways to talk about these things where you don't feel any less, where you don't feel as if you don't belong, that's a challenge, and there's no disputing that. But there are all kinds of ways to begin to talk about it. The first step is being able to accept it, that is part of the human condition. It doesn't make you any less a service person. It doesn't make you any less a man. To begin to talk about these things and to learn to do things about them, because there are lots of things we can do about mental health issues as they come up. But continually denying or distracting ourselves from them and not doing something about them, that tends to make things harder over time. So in the next video, I'll talk about a pretty important issue for a lot of veterans, and that is guilt and shame.